And I'm here sitting with you. I'm not the version who I want to be. I'm not living my dream life. I am, and so many people like me, they must be thinking about some unrealistic version of themselves that they want to become. But they know their reality. Like, how do they think and create of that future which they can't even see? That seems so far-fetched. How do I convince myself that I'm gonna be that person who's living a dream life? Because I know my reality and nothing seems to be working right now.
Disbeliever to belief. That's really it. That's it. If you choose to be a chronic disbeliever, then you'll find reasons in your life to reaffirm that disbelief. A person may say, I want to be in a loving relationship, but really they really want to sabotage their life in some way, right? The person who believes in a possibility has to believe in themselves. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibility. You can't have one without the other. The challenge is that your belief in yourself must be earned. Nobody's going to do that for you. And that's what we discovered. The person who heals from a chronic health condition, again, I can use these as example because we have thousands of these. Many of them stand on the stage, Raj, and when they tell their story of transformation to an audience of 2,000 or 2,200 people, they'll say, I kind of believed in this stuff. I really thought it was super cool. I saw this stories of transformation. I heard the testimonials. I believed in it. I just didn't believe it could work for me. That is a really big moment. That is the moment the person's no longer the philosopher. That's the moment the person's getting out of the bleachers and getting on the field. That's the person who says, I got to prove to myself that this does work. Now, here's the deal. Either you believe or you don't believe. The person who says, I realized that I believed that it worked for everybody else, but I didn't know if it would work for me. I have to prove to myself that it works for me. The majority of those people never missed a day in their meditation, because if they missed a day, they knew that they weren't believing that they were the creator of their life. Their standard was super high. They didn't go 50% in, 60% in. I'll check to see if it worked. It was no longer about, listen closely, it was no longer about results in their life. It was 100% about effort. It was all effort. They came up against their shadow self. They came up against their disbelief. They came up against their pain. They came up against their fear. They came up against not feeling well, feeling sick. They came up against their self-doubt. They came up with the fact that they didn't have enough time, but guess what? They did their meditation anyway, and they overcame their fear. They overcame their self-doubt. They overcame their disbelief. They overcame, their pain. They overcame their body. They started surrendering to love instead of fear. And their belief in themselves was earned. It was the overcoming, showing up even when they doubted, even when they disbelieved. They showed up anyway. And I was just looking at a testimonial the other day. The guy had a 9.5-inch tumor on his kidneys. 9.5 inches. I said to him, were there days where you didn't want to do your meditation? He said, oh yeah, I didn't feel well a lot of those days. I said, you do it anyway? He said, yep, never missed a day. I said, were there days where you doubted? He said, oh yeah, my family thought I was crazy. Did you do them anyway? Yeah, I overcame my doubt that day. And there's some people I say to them, why were you doing your meditations 3 times a day? 3 times a day. They'll say, the chemo wasn't working. The radiation wasn't working, the surgeries didn't work, the drug trial didn't work, the vegan, ketogenic, the intermittent fasting, none of the diets worked. The only thing I was left with was my belief in myself, right? The reason I did my meditations 3 times a day is because I started to disbelieve. I had one of 2 options: die or show up for myself. And I would not get up from that meditation until I believed in my future again. And the only way, as I said, you can believe in that future is to transform those limited emotions into elevated emotions. The person